Welcome to episode 461 of Salcedo Paranormal, and tonight I am sharing true paranormal stories from the web. As always, you can find all episodes of the show, along with links to social media and other ways to contact me at the podcast page, and that is salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have, comments, questions, there we go, or topic suggestions, or stories of paranormal experiences. Whether they're your own or from others that you trust, happy to either read those or have you join me on the show to talk about them. Sorry about that blank that just happened there. Thank you all for listening, whether you are here for the live streams on Discord, or if you listen to the podcast or YouTube feeds, or if you listen on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. There you can hear replays of 2 episodes of the show every night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right before Troubled Minds Radio comes on. I want to thank Michael Strange, host of Troubled Minds Radio, as well as Liam Martin, host of the Exile Minds podcast, for producing the show and putting it up on the station as well. So, and if you'd like to support the show, there are some different ways to do that. You can always share the show with others and rate and review the show on your podcast platform of choice. Also, I've written some paranormal fiction and nonfiction books you can check out over on Amazon. And I have a Patreon page as well, where there will always be one extra episode per month over there on Patreon. The one for this month is already up. And that'll be another one of these episodes, True Paranormal Stories from the Web. So, looking at hopefully starting to do those weekly, but haven't quite gotten there yet. But I'd love to do that, so that way there'd be at least 4 or 5 extra shows on Patreon every month. So that will start at some point within the next month or two here, maybe a few months, and get that going. So, or if you want to make a one-time donation, you can do that through PayPal or Venmo. Unfortunately, those are the only 2 platforms I can easily access as of right now, so I know that they are not everyone's favorite to do that on, but I'm somewhat limited with my low vision and devices and everything I can use. So, but help is never expected, but always appreciated, as there are expenses in making this show, between equipment and research materials, and then also travel. I'm going to be at the Mid-Michigan Paracon later on this year, November 4th and 5th. That's a Saturday and Sunday, at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. And I'll be doing recordings of myself and anyone else who wants to talk with me, as long as they're okay with that I will then share on the show when I get back from that event. So, just my thoughts on the experience and some of the ideas that are talked about there, and maybe even if we're lucky, we'll get some people that want to share stories while in there as well, hopefully. So we'll see what happens. So I think that takes care of everything. So I can get to the stories here. So, let's see. Alright, so this first one says, my family has had some odd experiences in my grandparents' house. One time, my mom and sister saw a shadow passing through a door. This happened after my own experiences with seeing shadows of people that have been seen in the house. We haven't been able to identify any of these shadow figures. I wonder if they are all one person, or if we have several different shadow people. No one has died in the home that I know of. The strangest part is I've seen what appeared to be the same shadow figure from my grandparents' home in my own house. I live several miles away from that house, so does this mean ghosts or shadow figures, whatever they are, can travel between locations. And that's where the story ends. First thing I want to say regarding that is there are some shadow figures, reports of shadow figures, where there are, it's hard to explain. I guess you could say the outlines, they seem maybe like they're distinct from each other. And in other words, the shape of the person, depending on what angle you're seeing them, that is a thing that does happen sometimes. Other times they're a lot more blurry, so it's hard to know for sure. But and as far as the writer's question there, I don't know why any of these beings, whatever they are, can't travel for sure. So that is amazing that they're seeing one that they think is the same one they've seen at their grandparents' home. I wonder again, are they thinking this because they can see sort of features in the shape that make it seem like it's the same one, or not? I don't know. It's always hard with these stories. They're based on just short sections that you don't get as many details as you want, and there's no easy way to get more. But there are reports of people. I haven't heard it so much with shadow figures, but I have heard it with sort of just apparitions in general, where they can appear. The same one can appear in different locations. So I don't know of any reason for sure why shadow figures couldn't also appear in different locations. Their grandparents' home does sound like it has some activity there, with multiple people seeing these figures. That to me rules out sort of one person who may somehow be exaggerating or faking or misidentifying things. I like that there's multiple witnesses in a way, because that sort of helps rule some of that out, I think. Unless they're all doing that, which then the question there is why. So, but just as always, I like to take these stories as they are whenever possible. And so it does sound like there's multiple people that visit the house that see things there. So, I would wonder what the history of the land is and all those things, and just if that would help explain things at all or not. Sometimes there is no easy explanation. There's no direct link to people that have been there before, so it's hard to say. But a neat story there, in terms of the same figure being seen in multiple locations and multiple people seeing shadow figures in the same location. So I think that's all I have to say on that one. So I'll move on to the next story here. This one says, people close to me have seen or had conversations with me when I wasn't there. It started when I was 13. My mother had a conversation while thinking I was home, but I wasn't. Years later, my girlfriend saw me walking down the hallway while I was asleep in bed. My roommates have also dealt with this strange experience, mostly at night. This has continued to happen with people I am close to today. But with all these sightings and conversations, I have never encountered myself, in quotation marks there, at all. But this happens often enough so that whenever I get close to anyone, I tell them about the other me, in quotation marks again, so that they will not be as surprised when they have similar experiences. And that's where that story ends. And that is, that's amazing in a way, because usually if you hear about, at first it almost sounds like a doppelganger, but then usually, at least as far as I can think right now, you don't usually have conversation. It sounds like two different things, almost. It sounds like a doppelganger when people are seeing this person, or this other version of this person. But then it sounds almost like a mimic when people are having conversations with them. I would wonder, and it's not, I don't know if it's clear from that story or not, if the this other is seen and heard at the same time or not. If it is, then that really is odd. I don't know what to make of that because doppelgangers and mimics seem to usually be, from all the other stories I've read and heard, they don't usually seem to be the same thing, I don't think. And again, with all these stories, as you all know, I don't claim to know anything. This is just sort of thoughts based on previous accounts that I've heard and read. But if it is the same happening at the same time, I don't know what to explain it as. Maybe some kind of, again, maybe alternate parallel universe bleed through. Um, the time where the writer was seen walking down the hallway while they were asleep, on its own, I would almost write that off. Not write that off, but I would almost put that down to simple. Well, simple, but put that down to astral projection. It's not really simple, um, but with all those other things happening, I don't know. I wonder if it could be all those different things, and they're just sort of happening in ways that maybe lead the writer and other people around them to think it's all one other entity, or if it is one other entity. And in that case, I would wonder again: is there a purpose, um, or is it, like I said, some kind of a weird multi-dimensional or universe thing, or some kind of a time anomaly? I don't know. Um, there's just so many possibilities there that, and it's odd that also sometimes I've heard of these sort of like trickster entities where they try to appear like the person or sound like the person, but then something feels a little bit off, and so it sort of gives them away. But it doesn't sound like that happens with this person's experience. Or this person, the experiences people have, it's not even this person's direct experience, which is really amazing. It doesn't sound like that's the case with the people that are having these experiences around this person. So, yeah, I have no idea what to make of that one. But again, that's we'll see what happens. I guess I wonder if that's sort of a more common than we know, or if it isn't, and that's just one of those rare stories where there is no. It is a unique thing, and that's always possible as well. So, yeah, I can't think of anything else for that one. So, again, I will just move on to the next story. This one says, this happened a couple of nights ago, after a concert in Ohio. My girlfriend and I were driving home on some back roads around 1 a.m. The GPS guided along roads with houses and open fields and hilly terrain. While driving up a hill, I saw a tall, lanky, but strong, dark figure running on two legs in a field to my left. The figure seemed to be going in the opposite direction and trying to reach some distant woods at an angle. It disappeared quickly, only visible for a second or two. My girlfriend didn't see it, but I told her what I saw. I tried to rationalize it as a possible trick of light or a tree. Still, I felt a strange vibe and sensed that I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I wonder if it could be a cryptid or if the headlights were playing tricks on me. And that's where that story ends. Um, And that one, I don't know. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of detail to that figure, but also, um, I mean, I tend to trust people who have these experiences, so it's possible they saw something. I can understand why they want to sort of try to write it off, but and I mean, I guess that's always possible. It could have just been trees or whatever, but um, yeah, odd experience there, and there's definitely no shortage of stories like that out there. So that's another reason why I tend to think that at least some of these people are seeing something other than just trees or tricks of the light or whatever. So, but sort of a that's an odd one because it's sort of straightforward, but also there's not much detail in it to really know what exactly they were seeing. But anyway, always those kinds of stories are always odd because there's just not much else to go on. But I don't doubt them either. This next one says this happened at a hospital where I work. It was built in the 1800s and it was recently renovated. I was walking to an exam room that needed cleaning. I passed some of my coworkers that were having a conversation in the hallway. I said hello and continued to the room. I saw one of the two coworkers walk past the room while I was washing my hands. The coworker wasn't smiling, which was unusual, and stared into the room in an odd way. I felt uneasy when they looked at me. They walked past the doorway and out of view. I was in the room for about 5 minutes before returning to my office. On the way, I saw the same two coworkers in the same spot as before. I was spooked as the coworker seemed to be in two places at once. And that's the end of that one. And now that does sound like it maybe could have been some sort of, um, I don't know, bilocation kind of distracted thought form version of the person that they saw there. I wonder. Um, it's hard to say, but yeah, that one is really amazing. And that I've heard of similar stories before where when these doubles of people um, go by, they seem either they seem sort of subdued or distracted or not interested or not really paying attention to whatever else is going on around them. And while they're basically their real or their solid self is doing whatever else they're doing. So, but there's always, I mean, that's the that would probably be the one situation I would hope for in a way, because otherwise you have to wonder who or what else is taking on that form to walk by and why, and then of course how. But yeah, odd story there. Hopefully, like I said, it's just some sort of extension of the person in the conversation. Maybe the that coworker having that conversation, for some whatever reason, really didn't want to be having that conversation anymore and wanted to get out of there, and was thinking about sort of walking away, but didn't feel like they could. Um, that seems like a possibility. But hospitals, I mean, I think there's so much energy going on there always, and in so many directions and so many different kinds of emotions. That they seem to be both when they're in use, when they're active, and even after they're not being used anymore. They seem to be active in another way, in the paranormal way. So I wouldn't doubt that there's some possibilities there. So moving on to the next story here. Let's see, I lost my spot. Okay. Oh, that wasn't it. All right, there we go. Okay, here we go. Uh, My mom's aunt passed away recently. Weeks after her death, the mailman stopped at her house. The mailman saw an older woman moving around in the kitchen. He approached the window, but the woman pointed for him to go next door. The mailman talked to her daughter, my mom's cousin, outside. She was the one that lived next door. The daughter said that she wasn't waiting for a package, and the mailman mentioned the old woman he had seen inside the house. The daughter checked the house and found it empty, but smelled her mother's perfume. And that's where that story ends. So, it sounds like this mailman who had a package to deliver thought he was seeing a regular person, a living person. Didn't even know about the passing of the person that used to live there. Maybe was new to the area or whatever. And then saw what turned out to be a ghost, a spirit, possibly. And met the daughter, luckily. And turns out he was seeing some kind of spirit, possibly. Really is amazing, that one right there, because it sounds like this figure was solid and moving as she would have in life before she had passed. And those kinds of stories are always amazing to me. The ones where people don't even know that they've seen something paranormal because they just whoever it was looked like they were just going about their regular routine, and they were solid and didn't look at all like your stereotypical ghost. Didn't look transparent or translucent. Didn't give off any extra light. Things like that. Those kinds of stories are always amazing to me because the person that's having the experience doesn't even know that they're having that until, the end of the story, so to speak. The end of basically after, and then they find out through someone else after that there was something odd going on there. And that's there's more of those stories than you might think out there. People sort of vanishing, people that appear to be solid. I mean, I can think of, there was one show a couple weeks ago where I had 3 stories like that, where it looked like a regular person, solid as everyone else, and they just vanished. I remember that I had 3 stories in one show, 2 different guys, and then another woman, basically a nun wearing a full their traditional clothing and everything, and they just vanished. And a couple of those cases, especially with the nun, there was nowhere. She was seen in an alley that had basically, you could only go 2 ways, back or forth, and she vanished while in between halves, or 2 halves basically, of a family. So that always is amazing to me when that happens, and and there's just so many stories of that. It always makes me wonder too, when it comes to that, how often there's one or more figures that are moving around in a public area, and especially in cases where maybe it's an area where everybody doesn't know everybody. How often is there some other figure there that's a spirit or a ghost or some other entity that we have no idea because they look just like everyone else? And with that thought, which may be frightening or exciting or many different things, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you all for listening, and I will talk to you all on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.